We're taught Benjamin Franklin was a wholesome founding father who flew a kite. Nobody tells you about the secret underground cave where he infiltrated a notorious, wealthy cult to manipulate and blackmail British politicians using reverse psychology. This is the story of how America's greatest diplomat weaponized psychological manipulation, secret societies, and stolen letters to ignite a revolution. In 1746, at the George and Vulture pub in London, a tavern that had already stood for over 600 years, wealthy English aristocrat Francis Dashwood gathered 12 men around a table. They called themselves the Order of the Knights of St. Francis, 12 members plus their leader. That number wasn't random. It was deliberate, irreverent mockery of Jesus and his 12 apostles. Their motto, borrowed from French satirist Rabelais, was simple and defiant. Fais ce que tu voudras, do what you want. History would remember them by a different name, the Hellfire Club. Dashwood himself was no ordinary aristocrat. Born in 1708 into enormous wealth, he'd been banned from the Papal States as a teenager, impersonated King Charles XII of Sweden at the Russian court, while Charles was Russia's sworn enemy, and even attempted to seduce Russian Tsarina Anne. All before his mid-20s. This was a man who treated international diplomacy like a game and powerful institutions like toys. By 1752, Dashwood had commissioned something extraordinary on his estate at West Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. A labyrinth of tunnels and caverns carved from chalk and flint, extending a quarter-mile beneath St. Lawrence Church. The deepest chamber, the inner temple, sat 300 feet directly below the church itself, heaven above, hell below. Only the inner circle, the so-called 12 apostles, could enter. The membership reads like a who's who of 18th century British power. John Montagu, the 4th Earl of Sandwich and First Lord of the Admiralty. Thomas Potter, the Paymaster General. Multiple members of Parliament. The Lord Mayor of London. The son of the Archbishop of Canterbury. Even the Earl of Bute, who would become Prime Minister. Then there was the Chevalier d'Eon, a French soldier, diplomat, and spy who lived parts of life as both Charles and Charlotte, one of the most remarkable espionage figures of the century. Into this extraordinary mix walked Benjamin Franklin. Franklin first arrived in London in 1757, officially serving as a representative of the Pennsylvania Assembly. He took up residence at 36 Craven Street, a townhouse that would later yield one of history's most macabre discoveries. But we'll get to that. What matters now is that Franklin, this supposedly simple colonial printer, quickly found his way into the most exclusive and dangerous social circle in Britain. Whether Franklin was a formal member of the Hellfire Club or frequent guest remains debated. What's not debated is that he visited West Wycombe multiple times, stayed for extended periods, and developed such a close relationship with Dashwood that an entire cave chamber in the complex is still named Franklin's Cave today. In November 1772, Franklin wrote to his son William that he'd spent 16 days at Dashwood's estate, describing the gardens as a paradise, and saying he felt as much at ease there as if it were his own home. But Franklin wasn't there just for the wine and gardens. He was there to build something far more valuable than friendship. He was building leverage. This is where the Ben Franklin effect comes in, and it's one of the most powerful psychological warfare tactics ever documented. Franklin himself described the technique in his autobiography. While serving in the Pennsylvania Assembly in 1737, he faced a political rival who actively opposed him. Instead of confronting the man or trying to win him over with favors, Franklin did something counterintuitive. He asked the rival for a favor. Specifically, he asked to borrow a rare book from the man's private library. The rival agreed. Franklin returned the book with a warm note of thanks. From that moment on, the man who had opposed Franklin treated him with genuine warmth. They became lifelong friends. This is reverse psychology in historical negotiations at its finest. The mechanism is cognitive dissonance, a psychological concept that psychologist Leon Festinger would later formally define in 1957. When someone does you a favor, their brain has to reconcile the action with their feelings. Why would I help someone I dislike? The easiest resolution is to decide they must actually like the person after all. Franklin grasped this instinctively, decades before psychologists had a name for it. Now imagine Franklin deploying this technique not on some local politician in Philadelphia, but on the most powerful men in the British Empire. Inside the Hellfire Caves and at Dashwood's estate, Franklin was surrounded by admirals, chancellors, spy masters, and members of parliament. Men who controlled the British Navy, the Treasury, colonial policy. And Franklin, the charming colonial philosopher, was asking for their help, their advice, their collaboration. In 1773, Franklin and Dashwood published a jointly authored abridgment of the Book of Common Prayer. Think about that. A founding father of the United States co-writing a religious text with the leader of a secret society infamous for mocking Christianity. Franklin later wrote that Dashwood had requested his assistance. He made the powerful lord feel like the intellectual patron, while Franklin positioned himself as the grateful collaborator. But while Franklin was building these relationships on one hand, he was conducting actual espionage with the other. In late 1772, Franklin came into possession of a set of private letters written by Thomas Hutchinson and Andrew Oliver, the governor and lieutenant governor of Massachusetts. In these letters, Hutchinson recommended that colonial liberties should be reduced by degrees, that colonial government should be made independent from provincial assemblies, and that more troops should be sent to keep American rebels under control. Franklin leaked them. By June 1773, the letters were published in the Boston Gazette. The effect was explosive. Samuel Adams, master of colonial propaganda, skillfully prepared the public mind with these revelations, turning private correspondence into revolutionary fuel. Franklin knew exactly what he was doing. He later defended himself by arguing that the letters were written by public officers to persons in public stations on public affairs, and that their tendency was to inflame the mother country against her colonies. The Hutchinson Letters affair didn't just embarrass British officials. It directly inflamed the tensions that led to the Boston Tea Party in December 1773. When Franklin finally admitted publicly to leaking the letters, the British establishment turned on him with fury. On January 29, 1774, Franklin was hauled before the Privy Council of Great Britain at a hearing room called the Cockpit, where Solicitor General Alexander Wedderburn subjected him to savage public humiliation. Franklin stood in his old-fashioned wig and suit of figured Manchester velvet, enduring the attack in what witnesses described as philosophic tranquility and sovereign contempt. The next day, he was stripped of his position as Deputy Postmaster General. And it was this humiliation that transformed Benjamin Franklin from moderate colonial diplomat into committed revolutionary. Within a year, he was back in America, helping draft the Declaration of Independence. Now, about those bones. In 1998, workers renovating Franklin's old Craven Street residence discovered a pit roughly 1 meter wide and 1 meter deep. Inside were over 1,200 pieces of bone from at least 15 individuals, showing clear dissection marks from surgical instruments. Police initially feared serial murder, but the bones dated to the 1760s and 1770s, precisely when Franklin lived there. The explanation turned out to be William Hewson, Franklin's neighbor and brilliant anatomist who ran an illegal anatomy school in the building. A portion of turtle spine and traces of mercury in the bone pit matched Hewson's known experiments on the lymphatic system. Franklin almost certainly knew what was happening in his own basement. Curious man that he was. Here's what makes Benjamin Franklin's story more remarkable than any conspiracy theory could be. He didn't need to be a secret agent with a code number. He didn't need to practice dark rituals in underground caves. What he actually did was more effective than any of that. He walked into the beating heart of the British establishment, made its most powerful members like him using psychological techniques he'd perfected over decades, extracted their secrets, weaponized private letters to set a continent on fire, and endured his punishment with such dignity that it only strengthened his resolve. The caves at West Wycombe are still open to visitors today. You can walk through Franklin's cave yourself. At 36 Craven Street, Franklin's London home now operates as a museum, bones and all. The monuments to his time in London still stand. But the real monument is the nation his manipulations helped create.